talk to me about Jalen Hurts. What are you hearing today, and is it something that is overly concerning to you?
I don't think it's time to be overly concerned quite yet. We were just out on the practice field a short time ago, and Hurts was not out there. There was only two quarterbacks that were taking snaps, and that was Tanner McKee and Ian Book. Kenny Pickett, of course, is dealing with the rib injury, and for a second straight day, he did not practice. And, Hurts hasn't been out there either. And so, there's still time, clearly, before they get into the playoff week and where all eyes will be on Hurts and whether he's ready to go. But what we can say right now, and we know with concussions, it's really difficult to project, and I'm not going to pretend to be a neurologist, but he's in concussion protocol and hasn't been out there, and it's just kind of a day-by-day thing to see when he gets back. And obviously the clock really starts ticking once they get past this Giants game and into playoff week.
Yeah, and obviously, Tim, the Giants game, a lot of the talk is going to be and continue to be on Saquon Barkley, especially if Will Shipley goes out and rushes for 160 yards, and they're going to be like, we told you. But as a team, you're in this locker room all of the time. As a team, it seems like everybody really is on the same page. I'm sure there's a little bit of that lingering, like would have been a really cool thing. But this, for the most part, this team knows what it takes to get to the Super Bowl, knows what it takes to have success in the postseason. And health is the number one thing. So how important do you think they view this bye week as it's going to be, basically, for this last week of the season?
Yeah, I think it's really a big thing, especially for the veterans. And Lane Johnson has really represented that side where he's saying, I'm 34 years old and, I need this kind of rest. It's been a long season. You also heard some conflicting messages with Jordan Mailata post-game saying, I'm going to be pressing as a captain for us to go for this record, because it's really it was a point of pride for the offensive line. And it also shows you how much Saquon Barkley has endeared himself, to this group very quickly. And when we talked with Barkley yesterday, you could tell, he admitted when he talked with Sirianni, he was like, I kind of want to go for it, but I understand and don't want to put anybody at unnecessary risk. And so I think that there maybe is a little bit of disappointment that the running back will have to deal with, maybe some offensive line members will have to deal with, but that quickly fades. Right now we're seeing all the quote-unquote backlash of them deciding not to play Barkley in this game. And it's pretty mild. Even people who are on the other side of it are like, I get it. I certainly understand. Just imagine what the other side would be and what the backlash would be if Barkley goes in there and he gets hurt and they lose in the first round.
Yeah.
The city would just go crazy. People would be calling for the head coach's job. It would not end well. So I think when you're sort of weighing both sides of it, you can understand why the Eagles leaned in the direction that they did.
Tim, yesterday, Nick Sirianni spoke about the collaborative process that went into the decision. Do you feel, in your estimation, that it was ever really a decision at all, or was it something that was they were kind of on the fence about?
I know that Sirianni wanted to talk to everybody involved and make sure that he got the correct pulse of all the members, from Barkley to the O-line, all the way through. And, of course, he's going to be consulting with Howie Roseman and with Jeffrey Lurie. But I think all we have to do is really go back to last year, where the Eagles decided to maybe get a better playoff position, and so they end up playing their starters against the Giants, and A.J. Brown gets hurt and wasn't able to play in that Tampa game, and Jalen Hurts got injured, and Devontae Smith got banged up, and that was the end of, an historic collapse here in Philly. And so really, you just want to, and Johnson mentioned this yesterday, was you want to learn from the past, and the recent history showed you exactly why you don't want to risk it here. And so I don't ever think it was in serious contemplation for them to go for the record. They wanted to respect Barkley and everybody's thoughts, but I think it was always going to end up this way.
So looking forward, obviously, it's Tanner McKee time here in Philadelphia, and everybody's real jazzed about that. But in all actuality, going forward, another kind of storyline is going to be the fact that Jalen Hurts will not have played for 3 weeks, basically, or a little bit over that, when you think about going back to his exit from the Commanders game. Any concern you think that the offense could have as far as getting him back in kind of the swing of things? He did play and win 10 straight weeks going back to their bye, but it will that, at this time of year, being on the same page and having rhythm with your receivers is very important too.
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, this is going to be one of the driving storylines as soon as the page gets flipped onto playoff week, is the fact that he hasn't played in a little bit now. And there is such a thing as getting a rhythm offensively. And I was thinking about this earlier today, because if you think back when, A.J. Brown was making his comments and really trying to put the focus on the passing game and making sure that it was up to speed come playoff time, and then that works and they end up having some success through the air, and it looks like they have a little bit of a rhythm going, and then the injury happens, and now you don't know where that rhythm stands. And so it just becomes a question mark. Like, can they jump back in where they were and roll right off the bat? And the downside when you're in the playoffs is you don't really have time to ramp it up. Like, this is a team that has failed to score in the first quarter in 10 of their 16 games, that seem to be getting better in that department. But if you fall behind against a good team, and let's say if it's the Packers, and then beyond that, like if they're playing the Lions or the Vikings, like, you just can't. You can't have those ruts offensively like maybe you can get away with against lesser teams during the regular season. So this is a real thing to watch. I mean, it's hard to say definitively whether they're just going to pick up where they left off or if there's going to be some rust to knock off when Hurts gets back in there. But that's obviously something that we're going to be keeping a watchful eye on as we get closer to the playoffs here.
Tim, this game Sunday obviously has no buzz as of right now, but are there any players that you're curious to see in an expanded role? What will you be looking for on Sunday?
Yeah, so Tanner McKee being one of them. And he's sort of adored himself to players in the locker room who were calling him the Mormon Missile after the game. And Jordan Mailata had a quote that I thought was really interesting that hasn't gotten that much play. He's like, now you see why our defense is so good. Like, wow. That's a nice compliment for the number 3 quarterbacks, and basically the work that he was giving that defense as a member of the scout team was really helping to sharpen the defense. So I thought that was telling. And I've been a sort of somebody who championed McKee for a while now. Like, every time you get to see him in the preseason or in training camp, you're like, man, this dude looks pretty good. He looks legit. And so I'm interested to see now that he has a full game to work with in the regular season, obviously without starters, but how does he look? And then I think the other one for me would be Keely Ringo, just for the fact of, like, there was chatter about him maybe being the starter this year before Quinion Mitchell really came on and assumed authority on the outside. Someone that A.J. Brown has talked really highly of, like, this guy can end up being a Pro Bowl player, an All-Pro player, like somebody who, at least in the view of some of these guys, has a really high ceiling. So, yeah, they'll be 2 of the guys that I'll be watching closely.
We're speaking with Tim McManus. He does a tremendous job covering the Philadelphia Eagles for ESPN.com.
Yeah, Tim, when you look ahead to the postseason and the matchup, more than likely will be the Packers. Either way, it was going to be somebody that they had faced. The Commanders, I think they have to lose to the Cowboys, and then they need, I guess, somebody else to beat the whatever it is. It's a scenario that's probably not likely, so it looks like it's going to be the Pack. How much can you look at because those are 2 different teams from when they met to open the season, and it's obviously a very good, skilled young quarterback in Jordan Love, but it's a different team as far as the style that they haven't faced one in quite a while. How much do you think they can look ahead a little bit to that and try to just cheat a little bit as far as advanced preparation if it is the Pack?
Yeah, and I asked Sirianni about this. He's like, we're just all focused on the Giants. Well, come on.
Yeah, stop it. We know you're not. I love that you asked that, too, by the way. Thank you for asking that.
No worries. But if they're not looking at the Packers and the Commanders this week in some form or fashion, that would be malpractice.
Right.
So, yeah, of course they're looking at it. I don't know how much you can glean from the opener in Sao Paulo. 2 teams still figuring themselves out. Playing in South America, I don't know. But we do know that, Jordan Love is very capable of getting hot. So that's one thing that you have to be wary of. Like, even before this was a possible matchup, I had the thought in my mind of, like, there is a scenario where Love gets red hot and he carries this Packers team into the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl. So it's plausible. This is not going to be an easy road for Philly. It could shake out that they, like, draw the NFC North throughout the entire NFC playoffs. Like, that's not ideal. No. And one thing that I saw when looking at the numbers just yesterday, sort of glancing around, is the Lions, the Vikings, and the Packers are all top 6 in rush defense. Obviously, this is an offense that's predicated on the ground game. And so, my thought is that, the Eagles are capable of beating any team in the NFL. I think that they're capable of going to and winning the Super Bowl. But this is also looking and shaping up like it's going to be a tough road, that the NFC is kind of stacked up. The Eagles are one of the best teams, but they're not the only good team, and that they're going to have their hands full really from the jump. So for me, I'm getting excited. Like, this is going to be a fascinating playoff. And for people who are looking at it from Philly's perspective, I think it's going to be nail biting. I think it's going to be good matchups. And the Green Bay would be a great way to start it off.
Last one for me, Tim, because I know you have the locker room coming up. But yesterday, the Eagles put tight end C.J. Uzomah on injured reserve, and I couldn't help but think that it's coinciding just nicely with Dallas Goedert and his health returning to form. But do you read into it in the sense that the Eagles are maybe buying themselves an extra roster spot for this weekend in terms of signing somebody like they did with Ian Book? Or, there's no way he plays this weekend, right?
No, I don't think so. Maybe would they want to give him a little bit of work? I think because he's a veteran, it's probably just smarter to make sure that he's ready to go for the playoffs. But when we were out on the practice field, we did see Goddard, and the Eagles amended their injury report yesterday, saying that he would have been a full participant in practice, had they not just had a walkthrough. And then he was out there today, at least working in some form or fashion. So I think that's good news. They got their tight end 1 on the men's. And it's looking, assuming that that Jalen Hurts can get back, that they'll be almost full go come playoffs. So, yeah, I would think that's more about maybe another roster spot. Eventually that's going to be filled by Dallas Goedert as they get ready for this postseason.
Well, Tim, we really appreciate you carving out a few minutes. If you don't already, you should be reading Tim on ESPN.com. He does a fantastic job. Tim, I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon.
That was Tim McManus, who joined us on the Comcast Business Hotline.
Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Really appreciate it. If you want more of this content, make sure you like and subscribe. And you can do that kind of over here if you want more of the best show ever.